Hey everyone, welcome back. Are you ready for another deep dive?
I know I am.
This time we're really digging into something that affects us all, sustainable agriculture. Because, everyone's got to eat.
That's right. It's about as universal as it gets.
Exactly. And to help us break it all down, we're turning to an episode of Masood Khan's Sustainability Rewired podcast. Have you heard of it?
I have. It's great. He always finds a way to make sustainability, dare I say it, fun?
Sustainability Rewired. Love that.
Okay.
It's like he knows talking about saving the planet needs a little energy boost.
Totally. But it
Yeah.
is exciting stuff. It's not just about feeling good. It's about facing a very real challenge.
Mhm.
How do we keep feeding a growing population without, ruining the planet in the process?
Okay, so how does Khan suggest we rewire our thinking about sustainable agriculture? What are the big ideas he's putting on the table?
Well, he lays out 5 key areas to focus on, and they're all interconnected, which is fascinating. So first up, regenerative farming.
Now, that one's been getting a lot of buzz lately. I've heard it described as, like, giving the soil a much-needed spa day.
Haha, that's one way to put it. It's really about working with nature, not against it. So things like no-till farming, which means you're not constantly churning up the soil, and using cover crops to naturally replenish nutrients.
So less disruption, more harmony.
Exactly. And Khan talks about how technology plays a huge role, but not in the way you might initially think.
Oh, like it's not just about fancy tractors with GPS.
Right. Although those are cool too. But we're talking next level stuff like drones analyzing crop health with crazy precision or AI predicting weather patterns to optimize planting and harvesting. It's agri-tech, but on a whole other level.
Hold on, drones scanning crops. Sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie.
I know, right? But it's happening now, and it's making a real difference.
Okay, so that's regenerative farming and agri-tech. What else did Khan highlight?
Well, he also dives into the rise of organic and non-GMO foods, which is huge right now, and for good reason.
Yeah, you see those labels everywhere these days, and I know a lot of people are willing to pay a premium for them.
Absolutely. And Khan argues that sustainable agriculture is key to meeting that growing demand and creating new markets for farmers.
Makes sense. You can't have a thriving organic movement without sustainable farming practices to back it up.
Exactly. And that ties into another big takeaway,
Yeah.
supply chain integration. It sounds kind of jargony, but really it's about transparency.
So knowing where our food comes from, how it was grown, who grew it, that kind of thing.
Right. And this is where technology comes in again. Khan gives an example. Imagine scanning a QR code on your apple and seeing the entire journey from the orchard to your grocery store, maybe even a message from the farmer who grew it.
Wow, that would be amazing. So no more mystery meat or mystery veggies.
Haha, exactly. And Khan argues that this transparency not only builds trust with consumers, but can also help hold everyone in the supply chain accountable for sustainable practices.
Okay, I'm convinced. Sign me up for the QR code Apple. What was the last point Khan emphasized?
This one's crucial, farmer support programs, because at the end of the day, farmers are on the front lines of this whole movement, right?
Absolutely. They're the ones actually
Yeah.
implementing all these changes.
Exactly. And Khan makes a really good point. It's not enough to just talk about sustainable agriculture. We need to make sure farmers have the resources and support they need to actually transition to these new practices.
So things like access to training, financial incentives, maybe even help with navigating all the new technology.
Exactly, because it can be overwhelming, especially for smaller farms.
Okay, so we've got regenerative farming, agri-tech, the organic movement, supply chain transparency, and supporting farmers. That's a lot to digest.
It is, but it's all connected, and Khan does a great job of weaving it all together.
He really does. Now, you mentioned earlier how technology is changing the game in agriculture, and I've got to admit, I'm really curious about the specifics. Like, how exactly is agri-tech impacting regenerative farming? Those two seem like they'd go hand in hand.
You're spot on. Think about it. Regenerative farming relies on a deep understanding of the land, right? Well, now, imagine sensors in the field that can monitor soil health in real time, measuring things like moisture levels, nutrient content, even microbial activity.
Wow, so farmers are getting a constant store of data about what's happening beneath the surface. That's incredible.
It is, and with AI-powered analysis, that data can be translated into actionable insights. It's like giving farmers X-ray vision for their soil. They can pinpoint exactly where and when to adjust their practices for maximum impact.
So no more guesswork, just data-driven decisions. I bet that's a game changer, especially when it comes to things like water conservation.
Absolutely. And it goes beyond that. AI can also analyze crop health with amazing accuracy, often detecting diseases or nutrient deficiencies before they're even visible to the naked eye.
Wait, seriously? So they're catching problems early on, which means they can address them before they become major issues.
Exactly. And often, with more targeted solutions, which means using less fertilizer or pesticides, it's a win-win for the farmer and the environment.
Now that you mention it, wasn't there something in the podcast about how this kind of data could also revolutionize the whole supply chain thing we were talking about?
Oh, absolutely. Imagine a future where all that data, how the food was grown, the resources used, the certifications earned, is not just available to the farmer, but is also linked to that QR code we talked about.
So when I scan my apple at the grocery store, I don't just see where it came from, but also how much water was used to grow it, what the soil conditions were like, all that.
Exactly. And maybe even a carbon footprint score. It allows consumers to make truly informed choices and supports brands that are prioritizing sustainable practices. Transparency and traceability, that's the future.
Listening to all of this, it's clear that sustainable agriculture is more than just a trend. It's a complete paradigm shift in how we think about food and our relationship with the planet.
Couldn't agree more. It's about recognizing that our food choices have a ripple effect on the environment, on farmers, on communities around the world.
Well said. So as we wrap up this deep dive, let's recap those key takeaways from Masood Khan's Sustainability Rewired podcast. We talked about the importance of regenerative farming and how agri-tech is enhancing those practices. We explored the rise of organic and non-GMO foods, the push for supply chain transparency, and the critical need to support our farmers throughout this transition.
And as you go about your day, think about this. With all these innovations and this growing awareness, how might our plates look different in the future? What new flavors, new ingredients, new possibilities might emerge as we continue to rewire our approach to sustainable agriculture?
Now there's a delicious question to ponder. Thanks for joining us for another deep dive. Until next time, stay curious.